So if you haven't done your handles, what you need to do, you'll make a stitch line at 15 millimeter or 1.5 centimeters. You fold it, so you have the strip here, you just fold the long edges together. Make sure that you're going at the 15 millimeter line. Also make sure that your middle is actually matching up. And then when you get to the end, you put the two layers together like this. Hold it in your hand. Keep it there, and then you make sure that your lines match up here. So you're back tacking at the end, and see, absolutely acceptable. If it's more than 5 millimeter, I would recommend to redo it, but a millimeter or 1.5 millimeters doesn't make anything. So what you do, then you can go and press this flat. Just do me one favor, don't press this side. If you have a broomstick or something else, use that, or if you want to finger press it, so all you need to do is take your fingernail and go over it, and when it lays flat, see, like this. And then what you do, you take a safety pin and just pull that whole thing through. And the way to do that, here's your safety pin. You go through the seam allowance here and this, close it, go in here, and then you feed the whole thing through. Here at the end, you need to make sure that everything is going in. And see, you just pull that a little bit. Don't squeeze it. You need to pull the outer layer without the inner layer being pulled back. So you gather this. See what I'm doing again. That's an easy way to go on the seam allowance, and then do that. You gather the next round. Again, pull it onto what you turned out already. And if you're going here in the back, see, this is how that works. And then you gather more and more and more. And then at one point, you should see this. So what you do then, take that safety pin out, hold this whole thing in your hand, so you grab it like this, here from the top, there you go. Like that. Hold it loosely, here, you pull, and then you have all of this, and you pull that through. So that will be your workout for the day. And then when you pressed it, it will lay flat, like this. There you go. So now you take this seam, maneuver it so that it is in the middle, and then press this whole thing when you're finished with that, your strip will look like this. And you can see on the inside, your seam allowances are here and there. And this will be a strap, and this will be the side that everybody will see. This will be the side that's on your shoulder. Okay, see you in the next step. So the front pocket that you have is already pressed and hemmed and everything. What I'm showing you here is actually how I usually do this. So this part has 2 notches. This is 1 centimeter and another centimeter. What I'm doing with that, I fold it over, create my hem here, and then edge stitch that down. For you, it's probably easier if you press it down before you do it, but I'm working on an industrial machine, so as you can see, I can pull here, nothing is moving. If you do that with your domestic, you can see your domestic machine actually moving across the table, and we don't want that. So, and as you can see, I'm going pretty close to the edge there and making sure that this is lining up so I don't pull it. Do my back tacking, and there we go. So this would be your hem, which you have already. Then you can zigzag the sides here and then fold them over. If you do that and you press it, what you would do is you can fold this down like that and then do this. This will give you a really nice and neat corner, and then you press that over like that. So when you have that all done and you have your pockets done already, you start pressing from up here. Same thing on this side and going down. If you press from the other side, you will push this past the edge, and this doesn't look good. So make sure you do it the other way around. For the zippered pocket, I know we started that in class. I don't know how far you got with that, but if you need a refresher, what you would do, you put your zipper this way, there's your cut edge, teeth are going down so you don't have them sitting up here. Yep. And then you stitch them on, and you go back to there, you do the same thing on the other side, and then you press the seam flat that it looks like this, and then you should have both of the pieces actually line up like that. So now we need to decide where we want to put our pocket, and for that you will find out, okay, I want it on the side closer to my body or on the other side. Which way do you want to open it? I chosen to do it this way. So what I do, I take this top part here, measure that I have about 6 centimeters here, or 5. So this is 5, this is 6. 5 gives you a little bit deeper pocket. And what I do with that is I measure it on both sides, make sure everything is laying flat, see where this corner is, and then I press it flat. When you've done this, you go to the end. The zipper is up here, and now you need to be really precise. If you look at the feed dog here, you see how the edge just shows here. What you're doing is You start stitching, back tack, and then you line up the pieces that you just shyly see a little bit of the seam from underneath, the fabric from underneath the second layer. So you go along there, you stitch it, go further, do that, and I'll show you the technique that I'm using. So I either use some forceps or an awl or tweezers, whatever is close by. And the reason why we're doing the French seam on this, and why you need to be really precise, you will see right here. So if we would go more than 1.5 centimeters, we would actually end up here and your zipper would be shorter. So what we're doing at this point, I adjust the camera a little bit so you can see this. So what I've done is I put the zipper here on the side that the teeth just touch each other. Here, they're going exactly the same way. You have about 2 millimeters between the two. And you move the material in. Again, up one stitch over the edge, back tacking, and cut it. So, with the other side, it could be possible that your material is a little bit different here, that your length is different on the zipper, so one side is longer, one is shorter. What I want you to do is just eyeball it about. So you're going that this point would be going onto your feed dog. Your feed dog is underneath here, so you make an eye line. So you make an eye line that this would go right underneath your feed dog. And what I mean with that, I'll show you here. So you back tack there. See how this now goes exactly where the feed dog is underneath here? So you go over that. And then what you can do, you can either continue on this width, or you go over that. This is underneath your feed dog and your foot, or between the feed dog and the foot, and you go all the way to the bottom. Back tack again, and that's that. So it will look like this. What you need to do now is cut the seam allowance back that it is about 3 millimeters. And I'll show you how that looks like in the next step. As you can see with this, I cut the rogue threads off, and here, see what I've done? This was our edge before. Now it is all at about 3 millimeters. Same thing here, the rogue threads. You just take your scissors or shears and you cut them off. And then what you do, you open your zipper and you turn the bag inside out. If you take your scissors, you go in this way. So the flat side into the corners, turn the corners out. See, there's no extra in here. You do that on the other side as well. And you do that on all 4 points. So So the two now up where the zipper is, you go here. And you go there. When you're done with that, you can go and press the seams flat so that they will look like this, and you would be able to stitch it on. So when you get back, I'll have the next step for you. So we have the next seam. I'm getting my shears out of the way. So we're here on the 1 centimeter line, or 10 mil. Let's zoom in here. And what you do, you start stitching, back tack again. And we're going along here. And now you can see why I said that you really need to be really precise with this. When you look at this, get that there. When I turn these two and put them onto the 1 centimeter mark, so I push that close together, and then we continue with the 1 centimeter mark or 10 mil, depending on what your throat plate is telling you. There you go. What we have now is our French seam. And you see this? So you should have a millimeter or be close to it on that side, and that's your first seam done. Then you turn your pocket around and you work with the other side. See? You have this side done. Now you're starting with the other one. And again, same thing here. Line it up with the 1 centimeter mark. Do your back tacking. So now here, again, we make sure this is laying flat. And when you're over the teeth, what you can do a back tack over them. So that gives you 3 stitch lines over it. Again, you're going to the end, 1 centimeter seam allowance, do your back tacking, and cut it. And then this is what one side looks like. This is what the other one looks like. And then you take your bag, and again, we're turning the corners out. I'm using the forceps, going in there, and what you're basically doing, you're laying the seam flat in there so that your seam allowance from the French seam actually lays flat in here. After you do that, you have this corner. There you go. You can open that. To that corner. And off to the last one. And as you can see here, you might have a few rogue threads. What I would do with these, just take your snips and do this. Lay your blades flat on it. If you have shears, you do it exactly the same way. We have the shears here. Put it on over your finger, lay it flat, and do that, and they're all gone. There you go. The other side is fine. Okay, you've done that. For the pocket with the button, I need you to fold over one side like this, 1.5 centimeters, and then 3 centimeters, and then edge stitch this down. The way you can do that, you draw a line from this edge and mark it at 3 centimeters, which gives you the fold line here. So you would have your markings here, and then from that you can either use this edge or you flatten it again. So you need the 1.5, you need 3, and you need 3. So you would do a line at 7.5, which will give you the distance here, 1.5, and then at the 7.5, because you took the 1.5 off, you would get automatically your hem of 3 centimeters. Then when you edge stitch it, it will look like this, and on the inside it will look like that. So you have your 1.5 centimeters, which goes to the middle of it, and from the other side it looks like this. Good luck with that. See you on the other side. On the other side of the bag, as you can see here, we'll have something that looks exactly the same, however they're a little bit different. When you look in here, so you have 3 centimeters, 3 centimeters, and 3 centimeters. What you need to do, you mark your line from here at 6 centimeters, and then another one at 9. You fold this edge to the line of 6 centimeters, you press that down, and when you've done that, you take this edge, this one here, and fold that over to your 9 centimeter line and press that down again, and again we will be doing edge stitching. And when you've done that, it will look exactly like the other stitch, the other side here, and you have the seam allowance going all the way. When you're done with that, we're going to the next step. So after we stitched our sides down with an edge stitch, we will go ahead and we measure from the top to the bottom and take the half point. From the half point here, we mark that and we make a mark where the center of this is, so you will be here at 1.5 centimeters and half of that. What you will be doing then is you will make a buttonhole. For that, it will look like this. There is your marker for the 1.5 centimeters and the middle, so you can see that here. This needs to be in the middle. So in order to start, it depends on your machine how it does the buttonhole, so I would suggest you try it on a scrap piece. You make the buttonhole 2 centimeters, if your buttonhole attachment has a automatic piece to switch that over, it will look like this. And what you do, you will put your button up here, press that tight so that the button sits in there, and then you put that on the machine and you will start it. And you will see this side here, if it's an automatic one, you have a little lever on the side that goes down, and this will maneuver it back and forth. If you have a machine where you need to do all of this manually, you need to figure out how the buttonhole will be done. So you have it probably in 4 steps. What I would do then is, depending on if number 1 is going in this direction or it's going into this direction, you choose that, you make 2 stitches. If this is number 1, you take number 2. So you make just the 2 stitches here, and then you either go up here or your machine goes up there. You will have to see that. You do the bar tack here about 7 stitches. This is not 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And when you've done that, you will do the other side. When you get to the bottom of it, you do your next 7 stitches, and then depending on where you are on here, you will do a little bit more of the stitching of number 1 or 2, whatever it is on your machine. So I will contact you when we're doing that to see how your machine is doing that. But then you do the buttonhole, so it's 2 centimeters, and you cut it open. But we can talk about that when we are on Zoom. So when you've done that, I will see you for the next step. Now we need to decide, do you want to have your button that it goes in here and covers that, which might be a bit tricky, or do you want to have the button here and the buttonhole going over that, which would be this way? What you would need to do in that case, you fold your material like this, and you go up here and you press it over, so there's about 5 centimeters from this stitch line here to the edge. You press that down. Make sure that these 2 seams are the edge and the seam laying on top of one another, and the same thing here. Then you press the lower part as well. And what we would have done with this pocket would have been to go and turn it inside out. We would have folded it this way so that it looks like that, and then we would stitch with a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance from up here down to the other line here. And then you would zigzag that. Or in class we would have done the overlocker. You can use the French seam that we done with the other pocket, or you can use your zigzag or decorative stitch if you want to overlock the edge here with your machine, or just use zigzag. You can use bias binding. There are many possibilities, but I will talk with you about that. And when you're done with the first side, you turn it around and you do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So just to show you what I'm doing, I have pressed this here, so I put that underneath the machine. I have the metric throat plate in here, so this is 1.5 centimeters. I line that up, and I'm going with the machine, and I back tack, and then I go And remember, when you're folding this, don't stitch it down like that, because then your buttonhole would be in the inside. You need to make sure that these pieces are laying like that. And I'm doing my seam this way because I have an overlocker here and I will be overlocking this. So at the end, again, you back tack and there you go. So the other side, you will start with your fold up here. So you see the crease in here, you need to fold it neatly that it is there. And again, you line your cut line up with the 1.5 centimeters. You do your back tacking and you start stitching. Now, remember what I said with the overlap here? So you make sure that this line matches up with the stitch line. So here it might push, as you can see, the material. So when you're about a stitch or two before that where you need to stitch at, you just lift the foot up. You can do that in the back there. Make sure this is laying flat and it sits in position. Put the foot down again and then you just stitch over that and continue all the way to the bottom. So you go one stitch over the edge and then you do your back tacking and you pull it out and cut your threads. And then you have the pocket like this. Now if you do it this way, what I would do is go over it with a zigzag stitch or with one of the over edging stitches that you have in your machine, or you done the French seam and then you basically finished when you do the second seam in here. If you put bias binding on, there are certain techniques, and if you want to do that, I show you that directly in class online. So when you're finished with your pocket, what you do, you turn it inside out like this. Take your tweezers or take a pencil or something else. I mean, you can use your scissors or shears if they're not too pointy. Make sure that they are not open, otherwise you will cut through the material. You turn the corner out like this and like that, and then you have your pocket, and then all you need to do is you line this up, you make sure those are sitting right on top of one another. You take a pencil, you go in, mark this right in the middle where you had your mark before, and then you will stitch the button on right in this area. Okay, and then this pocket is finished. So your front piece should have markings that correspond with what I have here. This is the position of the front pocket. So there should be a thread here, a thread there, and a thread there. So this is where the pocket will be later on. However, how to get this on there is a complete different story. So here with the lower marks, what you do, you take your pocket, you line up this piece that your pocket is actually, so if this is where the thread comes out, or if you have a dot on there. If this is where your dot is, you need to go 1 centimeter with this up and then line it up that way. And then what I want you to do, and I will show you how I'm making this disappear. Start from there, put the pocket on, and hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, you won't see the white part again. So, you stitch that along in between those two threads, or those two marks. So the other one would line up here. And that's all you need to do. Here at the end, 1 stitch over, back tack, done. So, your pocket will look like this. You press this up so it lays flat, and as you can see here, the white has disappeared. Just a few threads hanging out of here. So now when you have pressed this up, this is where your other two marks come in. One will be here, the other one will be here on the other side. What I want you to do is, with the top part, fold that in, go down like this, put your pocket down like that, and then start with an edge stitch again, back tack, 1 stitch over the edge, and then edge stitch your pocket on. And as you can see, that white thing here is disappearing. So now here on the bottom you might actually encounter this little thing that some of the fabric actually shows. Just push that in, either take a screwdriver, take something pointy. If you have a chopstick, that will do it as well. You go to the edge here, and now close up. You can see I'm 1 stitch away. You might not. 1 stitch away from the edge here. I have the needle in my garment. I lift my foot, I turn that 90 degrees. Now I'm going to continue to edge stitch this line here, and the reason why we edge stitch this is when you put your keys in there, if you would only do 1 seam, your keys would go through there in no time whatsoever. So here, when you get there, it will look like this. So you might have pressed this over and get rid of the thread here. Don't pull it out, push it in there. So again, we're stitching to here, not all the way across, like that. Turn it, and then we line up the top edge where our marker is, and you can see that in the next shot. So remember that white piece there? So I'll mark up this up here and make sure that it is sitting on that marker there. And then what I do, if you haven't ironed it over, you fold it down like this and you top stitch it on. So again, I fold that in this over so that it is really nice and clean. See? Ah, you can't see it yet, but here it's coming. There you see it. And I go over the edge, do my back tacking, and cut the thread. And you see the white one is completely on the inside. You won't have that, but there you go, there's your pocket. Now the next thing you need to do is, because we don't have the overlocker available, you have these cutouts, yeah, on both sides. What I want you to do is take the corners like this, and I hope you pressed the seam allowances up for the hem already. If not, you need to make a line at 9 centimeters. And then, so you can make one at 3 centimeters and at actually 7.5. And then you go over like this. So again, 3 centimeters, 7.5. Same thing as we done with the other bag where we put the buttonholes in. Press that if you want to do both. And then what we need to do is we put the right sides out and we do our next French seam. What we're doing here, we're lining the sides up so that your corner here looks like that. And we're going again with the feed dog just showing and stitching this up with about 3 millimeter like this. And as you can see, I laid that flat again, so you don't have the hem folded in. So I don't want you to stitch that down when they're looking like that, because you will have the whole thing hanging out. So fold that up that it looks like that. Then cut your threads here and you turn it to the other side. If you want to press the seam down, you can do that. If not, just do what I'm doing. I go under the machine again where we have the notch cut out or the corner cut out, and you might see a notch here, so that should be now at about 1 centimeter. And it is. So you start from there again, sure that your seam line here is on the edge, on the fold edge. Line it up with your 1 centimeter or 10 millimeter line. And repeat that on the other side. So when you're at the point that you have both of your side seams done and the French seams are finished, what I want you to do is take this corner, and you see these edges here, take those, pinch them, and guess what? Now it's a straight line. What you do with that, again the same thing, put it underneath your foot, do a seam line at 3 millimeters or 4, depending on how wide your feed dog is. Back tack, done. Do that with the other side as well. And just because it was so much fun, again here it looks like this. You pinch this corner, you take the other corner here, pull them, and there you go. And what you do with that, again same thing, make sure you back tack all the way over the edge, and that you catch all the fabric. So, same seam line is on both sides. Again there, you get rid of the rogue threads. Do that on both sides. Then you turn the bag inside out, and you finish the French seams on those two. I'll show you how to do that in the next step. So we turn the bag inside out, and you see the seam here. What you can do is actually lay that seam underneath, and then you lay this seam here flat, put it on your 1 centimeter or 10 millimeter marker, back tack again over the edge, go down here, lay this, that this corner is nice and sharp, again 1 stitch over the edge and back tack, and do that on the other side as well. Again here we have the side where your other French seam is. We're putting that onto the feed dog, not on the side where the foot is, and line that up with our 1 centimeter line. And there we go. Stitch it down, make sure this looks nice and neat. Done. So that's the body of the bag. You basically have a bag there. Now we turn the whole bag right side out, and then I will show you the next step. So for the next part where we attach the handles, what I need you to do is to put the side seams on top of one another so they match up here, and fold this so we find the middle of this. mark the middle either with a pin or with some chalk. Lay it down like this and then measure 10 centimeters from here to there and into the other direction as well. What I want you to do at that point is you take your handle, and now this is important, don't put it on this way, put it on with the seam showing upwards. So you have your 10 centimeters here, and that's where you put it. You can pin that in place so it doesn't move around, and you do the same thing. So you take the handle here, make sure it doesn't twist, and you do it on the other side where you have your 10 centimeters from the middle again. This is here, and then you do that as well. What I want you to do is start here at the side seam with 1.5 centimeters. And stitch along here. You don't need to back tack at the beginning. What I want you to do is where this handle sits, have the handle flat like this, have it go over the edge a little bit, and then before you get to the needle, pull it out and continue to the point where your other side of the handle is, and you might see those 2 notches here, which are the indicators for the center back. So I have my marker for this here. Do exactly the same thing again. I have this a little bit higher, and there you go. And then I'm going to the side seam and I'm doing the same thing for the other side. And when you're done with that, I see you again in the next video.